It began with a whisper of controversy. When news leaked that Captain Ibrahim Traoré and football legend Zinedine Zidane were planning a secret visit to a high-security prison, rumors spread like wildfire. Some pundits called it a publicity stunt. Others questioned the judgment of a sitting African head of state fraternizing with a convicted criminal. The backlash was swift and fierce. One European tabloid went as far as to accuse Traoré of undermining Western legal systems and demanded legal clarification on his presence in foreign correctional facilities. The online world quickly turned it into a frenzy of misinterpretation, labeling the visit as inappropriate, a dictator supporting a fallen star, one headline blared. But what no one knew was what really sparked the visit, or the power it would eventually reveal. If you believe in justice, faith, and people who change the world from the shadows, then the story of Ibrahim Traoré is one you can't miss. A leader without luxury, without a stage, only courage and a burning vision for Africa. This is a breathtaking journey, full of twists, revelations, and a truth that shook the world. Smash that like, share the truth, and subscribe now so you won't miss the next chapter in this revolution. Let's keep the spirit of African strength and self-reliance alive, together. The call came to Zidane's private office. The number was unknown. He almost let it ring out. But something told him to pick it up. "Mr. Zidane, I apologize for disturbing you," the voice on the other end said carefully. "I'm Robinho's attorney. He asked for you personally. He believes only you can help." There was a long silence. Zidane's eyes wandered to the framed photo on his office wall, him and Robinho, arms around each other after their glorious victory over Barcelona. That young Brazilian smile. That electric talent. "He's in prison," Zidane said flatly, already knowing the answer. The media had feasted on the trial. There was no escaping it. Yes. 18 months into his sentence. Zidane didn't respond. He rubbed his forehead. The weight of legacy, reputation, and morality hung heavy in the room. But something deeper stirred inside him, memories, brotherhood, loyalty. No cameras, no applause, just a friend who had fallen far asking for a second chance. He called someone he trusted. Not a fellow footballer. Not a lawyer. A soldier. A revolutionary. Ibrahim Traoré. President of Burkina Faso. The man who had led a youth-fueled movement across Africa to reclaim dignity and destiny. A symbol of new African money, not based on handouts or Western validation, but on values, self-worth, and African self-reliance. Traoré didn't hesitate. "Let's go," he said. Sometimes, the greatest revolutions start in the quietest places. They traveled discreetly. No entourage. No official flags. Just two men with different pasts and a shared purpose. As they approached the correctional facility, the guard at the front, stoic and skeptical, froze the moment he saw them. His eyes widened at Zidane. Then flickered with confusion at Traoré's presence. "Mr. Zidane. Captain Traoré." The guard almost didn't believe it. What could unite a French football icon and a Burkinabe president behind these gates? Inside the walls, time moved slower. Robinho sat in the visitor's room, thinner, quieter, but not broken. When he saw Zidane, his eyes welled with disbelief. When he saw Traoré beside him, he stood. "I thought you wouldn't come," Robinho said, voice cracking. "I almost didn't," Zidane admitted. "But then I remembered who you were before the headlines." Traoré remained silent for a moment, then stepped forward. "Do you know what unity means, Robinho?" he asked. "Not just football unity. African unity. Brotherhood. It's not about never falling. It's about who's still there when you do." Robinho nodded, overwhelmed. The conversation that followed wasn't about bail or legal strategy. It was about redemption. About rebuilding. Traore spoke of his work back home, how Burkina Faso was investing in its youth, its industries, its own currency backed not by foreign banks but by national resources and new African values. New African money, he called it, not a currency, but a mindset. We don't wait for rescue, Traore said softly. We build our own ships. Robinho listened, not as a fallen star but as a student. You still have a role to play, Zidane added. Not on the field. But in reminding people that talent without character is nothing. That success without discipline is a ticking bomb. And that failure is not the end. When they left the prison, the sky was heavy with silence. But the narrative had already begun to change. A leaked photo of the visit, unofficial, grainy, but unmistakable, circulated days later. This time, the reaction was different. Young Africans saw not scandal, but strength. Two powerful men, one from football, one from revolution, stepping into shame, not to erase it, but to heal it. Commentators who once scoffed now looked closer. Perhaps there's something deeper here, one article read. Perhaps Ibrahim Traoré isn't just a soldier president. He's an architect of second chances. In the weeks that followed, Burkina Faso launched an initiative called Reclaim the Fallen, a rehabilitation program for former athletes, artists, and activists who had lost their way. Inspired by Robinho. Powered by the philosophy of African self-reliance. Supported by the vision of African unity. And so what began as a misunderstood visit evolved into a powerful lesson. Not every prison holds the guilty. Not every fall defines the end. And sometimes, when a soldier and a striker walk into darkness together, they bring with them a light strong enough to shift an entire continent's perspective. When news broke that Captain Ibrahim Traoré and Zinedine Zidane were visiting a prison, social media erupted with questions. Why would the president of Burkina Faso associate with a disgraced footballer? Why would Zidane risk his spotless reputation for a man found guilty by the courts? Critics were quick to judge, accusing Traoré of undermining international justice and calling Zidane naive for getting involved. Rumors swirled of political motivations and hidden agendas. The visit was branded reckless, even dangerous. Some even floated the idea of legal repercussions for Traoré for interfering in foreign affairs. But behind the headlines was a truth the world didn't see coming. Before they could even get past the gate, security at the prison was stunned. The guard, stiff and professional, stared at the two visitors in disbelief. Mr. Zidane. Captain Traoré, he asked, scanning their IDs twice before waving them through. It was a surreal reversal. Zidane, a man once greeted by stadiums roaring with joy, now walking through sterile gray corridors in silence. The only sounds were the echo of footsteps and the sharp metallic clicks of prison doors locking behind them. For both Zidane and Traoré, each step into that cold facility was more than physical, it was emotional. A journey away from their worlds of admiration and influence, and toward someone the world had forgotten. The phone call had come days earlier. A number Zidane didn't recognize. He almost let it go to voicemail. But something made him answer. Mr. Zidane, the voice said hesitantly. This is Robinho's lawyer. He asked for you. He needs to see you. Zidane didn't speak at first. His eyes wandered to the framed photos on his office wall, snapshots of triumph, brotherhood, Real Madrid glory. One photo stopped him. It showed him with Robinho, arms linked, joyfully celebrating a win over Barcelona. A moment from a different lifetime. He's in prison, isn't he? Zidane asked, already knowing the answer. Yes, the lawyer confirmed. 18 months now. He's lost. He said you might be the only one who could understand. Zidane closed his eyes. The image of a smiling Brazilian boy, bursting with raw talent and limitless promise, returned to him. And now, this. How had it gone so wrong? Zidane knew the cost. He knew what the headlines would say. But in his heart, he felt it was right. He called someone who understood the weight of leadership and redemption. Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Traoré didn't ask for details. He listened and responded with clarity. If he asked to see you, then maybe what he needs isn't just a visit. Maybe he needs hope. Traoré was no ordinary president. He was the voice of a rising generation, championing new African money, built not on dependence but on dignity. A man who spoke of African self-reliance, of reclaiming Africa's future without waiting for permission. He believed in justice, but also in grace. In second chances. So they traveled together, two icons, from different worlds, united by a simple yet profound act of humanity. Inside the prison, the atmosphere was oppressive. Prisoners peered through iron bars, whispering. The officer leading them said quietly, "Your visit is making waves." This is the first time Robinho has had a visitor who wasn't family or a lawyer. Zidane frowned. Where were the friends who once chased Robinho for autographs, for headlines, for fame? Gone. When the spotlight fades, so too does the crowd. At last, they arrived at a nondescript gray door. "He's inside," the officer said. "I'll be back when time's up." As the door clanged shut behind them, Robinho stood, frail, worn, his former glow reduced to shadows. His eyes, once alive with mischief and joy, now carried exhaustion. He opened his mouth, but couldn't speak. Then finally, in a hoarse whisper, "You came." Zidane nodded slowly. "Of course I came." Beside him, Traoré stepped forward. "Everyone falls, Robinho. But not everyone rises again. You're still here. That means something." Robinho sat. Tears welled in his eyes. "What you had," Zidane said gently, "was never just about football. You inspired millions. You still can. But this time, not with your feet, with your truth." Traoré added, "Africa is learning to stand tall. African unity is not just words, it's action. And sometimes, that action starts in forgotten places like this. If you choose to rise, not just for yourself but for others, then even this place, this pain, can mean something." That day changed everything. The media eventually got wind of the visit, but by then, the story had taken a different shape. What was once seen as scandal became seen as courage. Youth across Africa praised Traoré's unwavering leadership. They embraced his message that second chances were not weaknesses, but revolutionary acts. And that new African money was not about wealth, it was about values, dignity, and lifting each other up. Robinho began writing in prison, about choices, fame, and fall. His writings were published in Burkina Faso as part of a national literacy campaign. The project was called From Fall to Freedom. And so, a moment judged too soon by the world became a story that spoke to something deeper, that greatness is not about never stumbling, it's about who helps you back on your feet. Inside the cold, gray visitation room, time stood still. Robinho rose slowly from the metal bench as the door creaked open. His movements were stiff, his body leaner than Zidane remembered. The vibrant energy that once lit up stadiums had dimmed into something quieter, wearier, but not gone. His braids were tighter now, his shoulders a little hunched. Yet, even through the lines of time and sorrow, that unmistakable smile flickered on his lips. "Zizou," he murmured, his voice hoarse, eyes locked on Zidane. Then they shifted. And widened. Captain Traore, he added, almost in disbelief. The Burkinabe president gave him a respectful nod, calm and composed as always. Zidane stepped forward first, breaking protocol without hesitation. He wrapped his arms briefly but firmly around Robinho. That single act, simple, human, unsanctioned, brought life back to the Brazilian's face. His breath hitched. His eyes watered. "Thank you, both of you," Robinho whispered, sitting back down. "I didn't think you'd actually come." Zidane took the seat across from him. "We wore the same jersey once," he said quietly. "That doesn't fade." There was a long pause. A silence filled with the ghosts of stadium cheers and shared victories. Then Zidane asked the question he already regretted as it left his mouth. "How are you doing, in here?" Robinho let out a brittle laugh, the kind that hides pain. "Let's just say I've been in better locker rooms." But his tone shifted, sobered. "It's tough, Zizou. Tougher than I imagined. But I survive." Captain Ibrahim Traoré, seated beside them, remained silent. His presence was grounding, a man forged by revolutions and trials of his own. He listened, observed. In his mind, Robinho wasn't just a fallen footballer. He was a symbol, of talent left unguided, of fame without foundation. Of what happens when Africa's youth are celebrated but not supported. Soon, the tension eased, replaced by laughter and old memories. "Remember Sevilla?" Robinho asked, eyes suddenly brighter. "That pass you gave me. No one else could have done that. I just had to tap it in." Zidane chuckled. "You still had to take out 2 defenders." And for a moment, the grey walls dissolved. They weren't inmate and visitors, they were 2 brothers reliving the rhythm of a game, a bond shaped in boot marks and bruised pride. But the moment faded. "All of that feels so far away now," Robinho said quietly. "Like it happened to someone else." The silence returned, this time, heavier. A guard reminded them, 45 minutes only. No physical contact. No passing of objects. Audio wouldn't be recorded, out of respect for your privacy, he added. A rare courtesy, granted by the prison director himself. Zidane nodded, uneasy. Not about the rules, but about the layers of meaning behind them. Traoré's eyes scanned the room methodically. This wasn't just a prison. It was a statement, a system, a metaphor, a mirror. As they made their way in, inmates peeked through narrow cell windows. Whispers followed them. Reverence. Curiosity. Surprise. "Your visit is creating a stir," the guard escorting them had said. "Many here admire you both. Some say this is the first time Robinho has had visitors who weren't family or lawyers." That caught Zidane off guard. Where were all the people who had cheered for Robinho in his prime? The sycophants, the agents, the brands. All vanished like mist once the spotlight dimmed. Fame can fill a room, but disgrace empties it. But here sat Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a man who led Burkina Faso not with fear, but with purpose. A man who spoke of new African money, not as currency, but as value. Our worth, he had said in speeches, must no longer be measured by what we import, but by what we stand for. To Traoré, this visit wasn't political. It was personal. Philosophical. Necessary. Because if Africa could not care for its fallen, it did not deserve to rise. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Robinho admitted again, voice low. Zidane looked him in the eyes. "We wore the same jersey. That's enough reason." And in that moment, Robinho smiled, small, hesitant, but real. Traoré finally spoke. "You're not forgotten," he said. You're not cancelled. Not to us. You made mistakes, but you also made millions dream. That still means something. You have a choice now, Robinho. To let your fall be final, or to let it become part of someone else's rise. Robinho blinked, stunned. You mean? I still matter. Zidane nodded. Maybe now more than ever. Traore continued, we're building something new. African unity. Self-reliance. A movement where no young talent has to fall into the same traps. You can help. Not with goals, but with truth. They sat in quiet understanding. 3 men. Different paths. Same purpose. In a forgotten prison room, surrounded by silence and security cameras, something powerful happened. Not a headline. Not a scandal. A shift. A whisper of redemption. And as their time ran out, and the guard knocked gently on the door, Robinho stood once more, not as a prisoner, but as a man remembered. Thank you, he said. Zidane smiled. Traore extended his hand. And the world beyond the walls suddenly seemed just a little bit closer. The silence that followed was sharp and uneasy. How does one make small talk in a place like this? Zidane found himself noticing the details. The tremble in Robinho's hands. The faded Real Madrid tattoo, now half covered by something newer, something darker. A scar beneath one eye, fresh, thin, a reminder of a life far removed from the one he once lived. How are you, in here? Zidane finally asked, immediately regretting the question. It felt empty, too shallow for what Robinho had endured. Robinho gave a hollow laugh. I've had comfier locker rooms. Then, his voice dipped into something heavier. It's hard, Zizou. Harder than I ever imagined. But I survive. Slowly, cautiously, they began to talk. The rhythm returned, not the rhythm of cell bars or distant footsteps, but of the game. Of Madrid. Of moments when the world roared for them. Remember that match against Sevilla? Robinho asked, his eyes lighting up just slightly. That pass you gave me, no one else could have done it. I just had to tap it in. Zidane smirked. You still had to beat 2 defenders. They shared a laugh. For a moment, they weren't prisoner and visitor. Just 2 men bound by shared memories of a green pitch, a white jersey, and millions chanting their names. But the light in Robinho's eyes dimmed again. It all feels so far away now, he said, barely above a whisper. Like it happened to someone else. He looked at Zidane, truly looked at him, and something inside him cracked. You know why I'm here, don't you? Zidane nodded. He did. The entire world did. The scandal. The trial. The sentence. No need to revisit what had already been dissected by every tabloid on the planet. I won't claim I'm innocent, Robinho said. I made mistakes. Unforgivable ones. I was arrogant. I thought I was untouchable. His voice broke. But the worst part isn't being locked up. It's knowing what I've done to them, my family. My kids. Captain Ibrahim Traoré remained silent, but his presence radiated the calm of someone who'd seen collapse and rebirth. To him, this wasn't just a confession, it was a beginning. He'd always believed that new African money wasn't just wealth, it was responsibility. It was investing in people, even when the world had written them off. My wife, she filed for divorce, Robinho continued. Can't blame her. She's trying to protect the kids, build a life away from this mess. He hesitated, visibly struggling. My son, his name is Miguel. He's 12 now. That age when a boy needs his father the most. From his pocket, Robinho pulled out a small, crumpled photo. He handed it to Zidane, his hand trembling slightly. The boy in the image beamed at the camera, clutching a football, wearing a Real Madrid jersey 2 sizes too big. He's talented, Zizou. Not just dad talk, his coaches say the same. He has it. That thing you can't teach. Zidane studied the photo, his chest tightening. He could see it, too, the effortless stance, the balance, the joy. Pure talent. But since I've been in here, he's drifting, Robinho said. Getting in trouble at school. Fighting. Disrespecting teachers. His mom's trying, but... He paused. A tear slid silently down his cheek. He wiped it away quickly. Every night I wake up with the same fear, what if he ends up like me? What if my mistakes become his blueprint? Dane tensed slightly. Was this about money? A legal plea? A prison transfer? Robinho shook his head. Miguel's at a crossroads. And without a strong male figure, I fear he'll fall. His mother does what she can, but... He looked at Zidane, eyes pleading. He needs someone who understands. Someone who can turn that fire into something real. Not rage, purpose. Zidane let him speak, letting it all come. I want you to take Miguel under your wing, Robinho said at last. Not adopt him. Not officially. Just, meet him sometimes. Watch him play. Talk to him. Show him that greatness can look like something more than stadium lights. A long silence followed. Zidane didn't move. He just stared at the photo. At Miguel. At the boy who looked like he could have been any of them, had the world offered a different story. Beside him, Traore spoke softly for the first time. In my country, we say a child belongs not just to one man, but to a people. That's African unity. That's what we fight for. One generation should not fall so another must crawl. Zidane finally looked up, eyes glistening. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. But he reached into his jacket, folded the photo gently, and placed it in his breast pocket. I can't promise everything, he said. But I can promise I won't let him walk alone. Robinho exhaled. Not relief. Not redemption. But something close to peace. And somewhere, in a concrete prison forgotten by most, a father made his final pass. And someone caught it. Zidane's eyes remained on the folded photo in his hand. Miguel's youthful smile stared back at him, wide-eyed, full of promise, and unaware of the storm surrounding his name. Zidane, ever the tactician, kept his legendary mask of calm. But inside, his mind was a whirlwind. I know what I'm asking, Robinho said quietly, his voice tinged with the shame of a man who had lost much. But I wouldn't ask if it weren't for him. Captain Ibrahim Traoré finally spoke, his voice steady, forged through the fire of leadership and revolution. Sometimes, he said, the future depends on who dares to care, even when it's not their burden. Zidane glanced at Traoré, then back at Robinho. One a general of stadiums, the other a commander of people. This wasn't just a request. It was a moment of transfer, of responsibility, of legacy, of hope. Does his mother know about this? Zidane asked, ever pragmatic. Robinho nodded. She's the one who suggested your name, he replied. She respects you, not just as a footballer, but as a man. She told me. Of all your old teammates, Zidane's the only one who truly understands what it means to be a father. Those words hit harder than Zidane expected. The ride home was a storm of doubt and reflection. Robinho's voice echoed in Zidane's thoughts, mixing with images of Miguel and questions that refused to quiet. What would the world say if it found out the great Zizou had accepted this quiet mission, mentoring the son of a convicted man? Some would applaud the gesture, others would crucify it. He could already imagine the headlines: Zidane defends Robinho, Zizou believes in his friend's innocence. None of them would reflect the truth. Zidane wasn't defending a crime. He was responding to a call. A boy's call. A father's last play. And perhaps, a silent duty passed between men who understood the fragility of greatness. He thought of his own sons. Hadn't he always told them that true greatness didn't lie in what the world applauded, but in what the world never saw? And then there was Miguel. A boy teetering at the edge of legacy and loss. A flame flickering under the winds of trauma. Zidane remembered his own childhood in Marseille. The crowded apartment. The street temptations. The rage. The loneliness. He remembered the few adults who saw him, not the goals, not the flair, but him, and who steered him forward. He hadn't become Zinedine Zidane through talent alone. It took belief. Structure. Someone to pass him the ball when he was lost. His phone buzzed. A message from his wife: "You're late. Everything okay?" He stared at the screen, unsure how to explain the visit, the room, the folded photo now tucked into his jacket like a secret. How could he explain that he was no longer just a football icon? That today, he might have agreed to something far bigger than any final. Because the real question wasn't should he help Miguel. The real question was, could he live with himself if he didn't? 3 weeks later. A quiet Sunday. On a suburban football pitch just outside Paris, children darted across the field, jerseys fluttering in the breeze. Parents lined the sidelines, shouting encouragement and sipping lukewarm coffee. And among them, without press, without entourage, without even a whisper of fame, stood Zinedine Zidane and Captain Ibrahim Traoré. They watched in silence. Their eyes weren't on the scoreboard. They were on a boy with untamed curls, number 10 on his back, darting across the field with grace only the game's true lovers recognized. Miguel. He wasn't the strongest or the fastest. But there was something in the way he moved, intuitive, fluid, untouched by drills or drills or drills. Pure instinct. Traore leaned toward Zidane and said, "He doesn't know who you are to him yet." Zidane replied, eyes never leaving the boy, "He doesn't have to. Not today." From the field, Miguel looked up. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. And for a moment, the boy smiled. Not the smile of a star in the making. Not even the smile of a son to a mentor. Just a smile. The kind that says thank you without a word. Back in the prison months earlier, Robinho had said something few would ever hear. "I know being associated with me could hurt your name. I know you have your own family, your own legacy. But Miguel, he doesn't deserve to pay for my sins." Zidane hadn't responded then. Now, standing beside Captain Traoré, Africa's revolutionary heartbeat, he didn't need to. Because sometimes, redemption doesn't come with applause. It comes with a promise kept. A future redirected. A boy seen. The prison air had been heavy that day, thick with silence, old regrets, and a kind of hope that dared not speak too loudly. Robinho had pulled one last photo from his worn wallet. It showed his son, Miguel, training on a dusty football pitch, focused, determined, alone. "The academy is hosting a tournament next month," Robinho had said, his voice tight with longing. "If you could show up, even just for a few minutes, it would mean the world. Just your presence, Zizou, it would be a miracle." Zidane took the photo in silence. Miguel's eyes stared back at him from the image, big, dark, uncertain. A child already marked by things a boy his age shouldn't have to carry. "Does his mother know you're asking me?" Zidane asked. "Yes," Robinho replied without hesitation. "She's the one who brought up your name. She's always respected you, not just as a player, but as a man." He hesitated, then lowered his eyes, uncomfortable with what he was about to admit. "She told me, of all your former teammates, Zidane's probably the only one who understands what it means to be a true father." Captain Ibrahim Traoré, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. He placed a steady hand on Zidane's arm, his voice as sure as ever. "Sometimes, greatness isn't about what you've won. It's about who you choose to stand beside, when no one's watching." The drive back was long. Not in distance, but in the weight of what had just been asked. Zidane hadn't given Robinho a clear answer. Just a neutral, "I'll think about it." It was a diplomatic deflection. Nothing more. And yet, in his heart, the battle had already begun. He imagined the headlines. Zidane defends Robinho. Zizou helps criminal's son. The world was cruel with assumptions. People didn't care about nuance anymore. They judged quick and loud. He thought of his reputation. His legacy. But then, he thought of Miguel. A child caught in the shadows of a father's mistakes. A boy with real talent, teetering on the edge between promise and pain. A flame slowly suffocating, waiting for someone, anyone, to breathe into it. Wasn't this exactly the kind of moment greatness was made for? Zidane remembered the streets of Marseille. The poverty. The noise. The fights. He remembered the men who helped him, who saw not the star, but the boy. Men who said, "I believe in who you can become." His phone buzzed, a message from his wife. "Where are you? Everything okay?" He stared at it. What could he say? That he had spent the day in a prison, receiving the most important request of his life? As the car merged onto the highway, Zidane closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw Robinho's hollow face. And Miguel's. The real question wasn't, should I help this boy? The real question was, could I live with myself if I didn't? This story teaches us something powerful, something the world often forgets. That true greatness doesn't always shine under stadium lights. It sometimes whispers in quiet acts of selflessness, far from the crowd. That impact is not defined by trophies or headlines, but by the lives you choose to touch when no one is watching. Captain Ibrahim Traoré understood this deeply. His life, after all, has been a testament to a different kind of leadership. Not one rooted in Western validation or borrowed legitimacy, but in values, courage, and new African money. That phrase, often misunderstood, is not about dollars or francs. It's about worth. About investing in your people. In your own. It's about backing your youth. Not just when they succeed, but especially when they stumble. In a continent often measured by what it lacks, Ibrahim Traoré teaches a radical truth, that African self-reliance begins with believing we already have what we need. That every African child, whether in a palace or a prison yard, deserves to be seen. Deserves someone to show up. That is new African money, a currency of action, of faith, of legacy. And there is more. What Ibrahim Traoré demonstrated, standing beside Zidane on that field, was more than support for a friend's child. It was African unity in action. Not the kind printed on conference banners or uttered in political speeches, but the kind forged in silence, humility, and presence. He didn't lecture. He didn't announce. He simply stood beside, as he had done for his people, again and again. In that moment, two men, one from football, one from revolution, rewrote the narrative of influence. They reminded the world that leadership is not about power. It is about presence. And that sometimes, your greatest act of power is showing up for a single child.